This is a giant slime statue, and inside of it is one of the hardest prisons which I am going to be attempting to escape. I spawned inside of a bedrock room with a sign that said the rules. No breaking signs. I walked out into another room and I saw a crafting table and a hopper. I opened the hopper and there was 8 iron inside. I looked up and there was a button on the roof as well as a 1-block gap which I assumed was the exit to this room. The problem was I didn't know how to fit through the 1-block gap with only 8 iron ingots. I grabbed the crafting table and placed it so that I could look through the gap, but I found nothing. It wasn't until I checked my crafts that I realized what I needed to do. I needed to make 2 iron trapdoors, one to build up and the other to push me through the gap. So I placed the trapdoors, and after a few tries I made it to the other side. In the next room there's a 5-block gap with a pit of lava under it, and there were ice blocks below my feet. These ice blocks were packed ice though, so I could not break them for water. Normally this would be a problem because you can't make a 5-block jump in Minecraft, but if I get a running start and spam my spacebar, I am actually able to make the jump because there is ice. I made it into the next room and there's a crafting table on the floor and an item frame with a slime block on the wall. There was another room that I was safe to drop into which had more slime balls on the wall. So I collected all the slime balls and now I had 8 slime balls and 8 item frames. There was a bedrock block in the middle of the floor and I was pretty sure I needed to place a slime block on it to bounce to the next room. But I still needed 1 more slime ball to make a slime block. I looked around the room and found nothing, but then I decided to break the crafting table and the last slime ball was under it. So I put the crafting table back and I crafted the slime block. Now I could place the slime block on top of the bedrock block and jump to the next room. In the next room I found 2 item frames with a red and brown mushroom in them. There was also a slab and a deep slate block that was probably meant to blend in with the bedrock. So I broke the deep slate block and underneath it was a hopper that contained a bowl. I also tried breaking the slab but there was nothing under it, so I put it back. I needed to make a 1.5 block jump, but the only thing I could craft was mushroom soup, so I had to be missing something. I looked around and eventually I found another deep slate block hiding in the bedrock. So I broke the deep slate and above it was a cornflower. I now knew exactly what to craft. I crafted a suspicious stew, and because I used a cornflower, the stew would give me jump boost. This jump boost would allow me to make a 1.5 block jump into the next room. Inside of the next room there was a long hole in the ground as well as a stone block in an item frame with a sign pointing towards it. There was another stone above me as well, so I grabbed the stone and dropped into the room. I collected the other stone and then checked the hole for anything else. Inside of the hole there was a crafting table and another stone, so I collected that too. I needed to make it up this wall, but 3 stone blocks definitely wouldn't be enough. So I checked the crafting table and saw that I could make 6 stone slabs, which would be better. After I made the slabs, I went to the sign that I saw earlier, assuming that was where I needed to build up. I built up and I was still short a few blocks, but I looked in F5 and saw a wooden pressure plate at the top. I realized that from where I was standing, I could throw one of the item frames on the pressure plate to activate it. So I activated the pressure plate and water came out, allowing me to swim out. In this part of the room there was nothing except for a hole in the roof which was the exit. I was confused until I realized I could swim through the water to break the piston. Behind the piston there was a barrel that contained a slime block and that was it. So I went back into the room and now I had a piston and a slime block. If I placed the slime block on top of the piston and stood on it, I could boost myself up to the room, but the problem was I still needed to activate the piston. Luckily, I could break the pressure plate from before and I could throw an item frame on it to activate the piston and boost me to the next room. Inside of this room, there was a furnace in the corner, a hole with 3 beehives in it, a hopper on the roof, and a massive hole covered in signs. I opened the hopper first and inside of it was 6 blocks of sand. Unfortunately, these would be of no use to get down the hole, so I had to keep looking. There was nothing else in this room though, so I decided to break the hopper. Behind the hopper there was an item frame with coal in it, so I was pretty sure I had to smelt the sand. So I used the furnace to smelt the sand and I was left with 6 glass. This still didn't give me a way to get down the hole though, so I decided to break the furnace because I didn't need it anymore. Behind the furnace there was a crafting table and I could only make 2 things. I remembered there were still beehives in the hole, so I made bottles to collect the honey. If I collected the honey, I can make a honey block, which would allow me to take less fall damage dropping down. So I collected the honey, but I only had 3 bottles and I needed 4 to make a block of honey. Luckily there was another beehive hidden underneath and I was able to make the honey block. So I dropped down and landed the clutch, making it to the next room. There was a 2-block jump to get to the next part of the room, so I had to use my honey block to get up. I thought I was stuck, but I remembered that I needed to crouch to the very edge of the block to be able to jump. Inside of the next room, there was lava flowing from the roof, as well as a second area with bamboo in it. I looked up and also ended up finding a fire resistance arrow, so I grabbed that. Before I dropped into the next part of the room, I clicked the lava to see if anything was behind it, and I found a hopper with a crafting table. Now I was sure there was nothing left at the top, so I dropped down into another part of the room. I broke the dirt holding up the bamboo, and I found a hopper underneath it with 3 string inside of it. Now I was able to craft a bow, which would allow me to use the fire resistance arrow to go inside the lava. I tried to get back up, but I didn't have enough blocks. That was when I realized there was another deep slate block, so I broke it and there was another piece of dirt behind it. Now I was able to get back to the top part, and I shot myself with the fire resistance arrow. I swam down the lava first, and there was a room with a hopper that contained 12 string. I swam up to the top of the lava, and there was a room, but I was trapped in the lava by a bedrock block above me. There was a chest I could reach though, so I opened it and found 3 wood planks. There was also a crafting table, and I knew exactly what to do. Just like in my last video, I needed to make a bed and sleep in it to get through the hole. So I made the bed and placed it in the room, but it was still daytime, so I was unable to sleep. I realized it didn't matter though, because the bed set my spawn point, so I just had to wait for the fire resistance to run out and swim in the lava until I died. I threw my items into the room so I didn't lose them, and I let myself die in the lava and respawned in the next room. I collected the chest and the crafting table, and I used them to build up to the next part of this room. I walked down this hallway, and I saw a sign that said over 98% of you are not subscribed, which is better than last time, but it still isn't 0%, so please subscribe. At the end of the hallway, there was a giant drop down into another room that I would definitely die from. It was fine though, because I still had my bed, which I could use to negate some of the fall damage. The only thing in the next room was a rabbit's foot in an item frame and a 2-block jump to another room. I could see targets in the other room, but I didn't have any arrows to shoot them. I looked around the room and I ended up finding a secret hopper with a blaze powder and a nether wart inside. Now I was pretty sure I needed to make a potion, but I was missing a brewing stand. I thought I had looked everywhere, but then I placed the bed under my feet to get a better look into the next room and saw a brewing stand hiding in the corner. So I used the brewing stand to make a potion of leaping, and because I was standing on the bed, I was able to jump into the next room because it was only a 1.5 block jump. In this room, I found a slime block in the corner, and in front of me there was a big lava pit that I couldn't get across. There were a couple of targets on the roof, but I didn't have any projectiles to hit them with. I saw a hidden hopper across from me, so I checked if there was one on my side, and sure enough there was. The hopper contained 2 arrows, and now I could use them to shoot the targets. The targets dropped 2 sand blocks into the lava, and I could use them to parkour across the lava. I made it to the other side and opened the hopper, finding an ender pearl. I went to the end of the hallway and there was 2 ladders, and that was it. The only thing I could do here was pearl glitch, so I threw my pearl and I was teleported to another room. There was another slime ball in an item frame, so I took that, and in front of me there was an elevator to the next room. This room had lava falling from the roof, a single block of ice in the floor, 4 beehives with honey forming a staircase, and another part of the room higher up. I checked inside of the lava, and like usual, there was a hopper hidden underneath with 4 string and 2 iron ingots. With 4 string and 4 beehives, I realized I could make candles to melt the ice, but I still needed honeycombs to craft candles, and all I had were beehives. But then I remembered I had 2 iron and I could make shears. Shears would allow me to collect the honeycombs from the beehives. So I made shears and collected the honeycombs. After that, I crafted 4 candles and placed them on top of the ice block. I waited for the ice to melt, but then I realized I still had to light the candles for that to happen. I had nothing in my inventory to light the candles, but there was still one part of the room I hadn't checked. I used F5 and I could see there was a hopper in this part of the room, but it was still too high up for me to reach. Luckily, I still had honeycombs left over, and I could make 2 honeycomb blocks to complete the staircase. When I got up, I found another slime ball in an item frame, and I checked the hopper and I found an arrow. This might seem useless, but I can actually shoot the arrow through the lava to set it on fire and light the candles, so I lit the candles and waited, and eventually the ice melted. I swam down the water and I made it into a small cave-like room. I was trapped by a bedrock block above my head, and I could see nothing except for a piston with a slime block on top and an observer beside it. This was until I noticed water particles coming from the ceiling. I crouched forward and ended up finding a deep slate block, so I broke it. Behind the block there was water, and I could now swim out of the hole. There was a hole above the slime block, but it was too high up to reach. I went back to check the water, and I found another slime ball in an item frame on the way. I swam up the water, and there was a small hole with a hopper inside that had 2 nether wart and 2 nether bricks. I went back to the slime block and thought I was missing something, but I checked my inventory and saw that I could craft red nether bricks. I placed the red nether bricks in front of the observer, and I was launched into the next room. I immediately saw a hopper in the floor, and I checked it and found 2 moss blocks. In front of me there was a 4-block high wall with a fence at the bottom. 2 moss blocks was not enough to climb up the 4 blocks, and I couldn't jump on top of the fence because it's too high. So I turned the moss blocks into moss carpets, and now I was able to climb up. The next part of the room had a taller wall I had to climb and a crafting table in the corner. I was also able to see a few pistons holding up water in the roof. I checked behind the crafting table, but there was nothing, so I placed it back down. I found a hole in the corner with water at the bottom, so I dropped down. Inside of the hole there was another room, and I found a bunch of dead bushes and blocks of sand. So I broke it all, and I was left with 8 sticks and 15 sand. I was about to build back up, but I noticed there was another part of this room that I could build up to. So I built up to the next part of the room, and there was another item frame with a slime ball as well as a hopper that contained 2 steak and a stone block. There was nothing else up there though, so I went back to the bottom and built up to the main room. Luckily 15 sand was exactly enough to make it back up, and I went back to the crafting table and used the 8 sticks I got to make ladders. I used the ladders to make it up the wall to the top of the room. There was a hopper with a sign pointing at it, so I checked the hopper and it had an iron pickaxe in it. I took the pickaxe and broke the hopper to see if there was anything underneath. Underneath the hopper there was nothing, so now I was kind of confused until I remembered the pistons I saw earlier. The reason this was important was because I could make a lever to activate the pistons. But the problem was I didn't know where to place it, so I tried the obvious, which was under the sign with an arrow pointing down. To my surprise, it worked and water dropped down from the roof, so I climbed up the water and made it to another room. In the next room, there were some walls that I couldn't climb up and another piston with a slime block on top. I found another slime ball in the corner, and that was it. I looked around and ended up finding a couple of wood buttons near the roof. I still had 1 arrow, so I decided to shoot the buttons to see what happened. It ended up activating the piston underneath me, and I was boosted to the next part of the room. In this part of the room, there was only a block of dirt, and I needed to make it up 4 blocks. I tried building up with the items I had, but it was impossible. That was until I remembered I can break the block underneath candles, and they stay floating. So I made a staircase out of the candles, and I climbed up the wall to another part of the room. In this part of the room, there were some leaves in the corner, and I had to cross a 2-block high gap to get to the next room. I could use the hopper I had from earlier, but I still had shears, so I decided to shear the leaves to build up instead. In the last part of the room, there was a sign with arrows and a pit of snow. There was a 5-block jump to the exit, and I was able to cross this with the hopper in my inventory. But I saw a block of powdered snow in the middle of the hole, so I decided to drop down in case there was something important. I broke the powdered snow, and there was a hopper underneath it. The hopper had a diamond shovel inside of it, and that was it. So I collected the snow and built back up and just built to the last part of the room. I found another slime ball in the corner, and there was a hopper that I couldn't reach, but I was able to reach it when I crouched, and there was a levitation arrow in the hopper. I looked up and I saw a hole in the roof, so I shot myself with the levitation arrow and floated up to another room. In this room there was a hopper on the roof. I opened it and it had 12 sand in it. There was another slime ball in an item frame and a furnace and a crafting table at the end. I looked up and there was a big hole, but I only had 12 sand, so I wouldn't be able to get to the top. I knew I was missing something, so I tried breaking the hopper, but I found nothing. I broke the crafting table as well, and behind it there was a dried kelp block. This might seem useless, but a dried kelp block can actually be used to smelt all 12 of the sand blocks. So I turned all of the sand into glass, and now I was left with 12 glass blocks, which still isn't enough to get to the top, but I can actually turn those blocks into 32 glass panes. 32 glass panes looks like it is enough to get up the hole, so I tried building up and it was just enough to make it to the ladders. I was in a room full of lime wool and I tried to break out of it, but everything was covered in barriers. I looked down and there were 2 bedrock blocks that were positioned kind of like the ones from the room I did earlier. There was a sign that said, "I hope you have them all," and another slime ball in an item frame. I picked up the slime ball and now I had 9 slime balls and I knew what to do. I crafted a slime block, lined myself up, and jumped, placing the slime block underneath my feet. I made it to the exit and there was a big drop that I wouldn't survive, Luckily there was an elytra and a firework rocket on the walls, so I took those and I escaped the prison.